I believe I was about either 8 or 10 years old. It's been a really long time, so I don't remember exactly, but I was in the Boy Scouts. And this was the fall, I'd say around October or so. I remember it being fall because it was cold out. And me and the troop that I was in, we went to this campground in upstate Pennsylvania. Now, thankfully for the majority of these trips, we usually went to places that had cabins. There were a couple times where we had to pitch tents and stay more in the great outdoors, but the majority of them we actually had cabins that we could stay in. It was shelter, but it was not heated and there was no running water. So if you had to go to the bathroom or anything, you had to leave, go out in the cold, walk however far to the lavatory or latrine or bathroom, whatever the hell they called it. And, wash your hands, brush your teeth, take a crap, take a piss, whatever. The cabins fit about 8 people, so there were 4 bunk beds per cabin. Not terribly comfortable, but not as bad as laying out on the dirt. We got there about Friday evening, and I was staying in a cabin with my friend Gil, who was a kid I went to school with. The first evening there, it was cool. After everybody got situated, we all met around a big campfire and roasted marshmallows and told ghost stories, and it was fun for little 10-year-old me, but now I'm not exactly as big on the outdoorsy stuff as I used to be. I'd kind of rather be inside on a comfortable mattress, watching television with actual heat. So after the campfire, everybody went to the bathroom and then went back to their cabins and went to sleep for the night. The next morning, everybody gets up and we're getting ready, and my friend Gil is telling me that he saw a UFO last night. And of course, I'm like, bullshit, no you didn't. And, well, I was 10, so maybe I said bull crap. I don't remember. Anyway, there were a lot of shows on, reruns of In Search Of, and then there was Unsolved Mysteries and all that kind of stuff where they were always showing UFO footage, and this guy saw a UFO and caught it on tape, and oh my god, look, irrefutable proof that there's UFOs and aliens. And so I kind of just chalked it up to that he saw something in the sky, helicopter, airplane, whatever, and just didn't know what he was talking about. So he assured me, he was like, no, I saw a UFO. And I was like, well, how do you know for sure? And he pulled out of his backpack a pair of binoculars. He said last night around like 1, 2 a.m., whatever, he got up, he had to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was pretty far down from our cabin. And he said while he was out there, he heard this really weird noise in the sky. And being that this was upstate Pennsylvania, the skies are pretty clear up there. So he looked up and he saw this thing, and he ran back to the cabin, got his binoculars, went out, and said it was this thing he'd never seen before, just hovering in the sky. For a better description, he said it looked like a giant booger. It was green, and it had sort of a hatchback spoiler on it. So, of course, immediately I'm thinking that he's making this whole thing up. This is ridiculous. I'm like, why didn't you come back and wake anybody up? He said while he was out there looking at it, it shot straight up into the sky, and there was nothing else to look at, so there was no reason to come back and wake anybody up. So I'm like, okay, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you see something like that tonight, come back and wake me up, and I'll go look at it. And figuring he's full of shit. That night, we had another outdoor barbecue. One of the Boy Scout leaders was ex-military, and he brought a bunch of MREs, which are meals ready to eat. It's army rations that they eat out in the field. And maybe it was me being a little kid, but man, was that stuff delicious. I had this little can that you heated up in the fire, and it looked like dog food, but it tasted like delicious. And it came with that. It came with like a brownie in a can, and everything was in a can. It basically was a lot of high-calorie food that would keep you going if you were eating this out in the field. So that night after the campfire, everybody went back to their cabins, and we went to sleep. About 1 a.m, Gil's waking me up, and he says, "Do you hear that?" Immediately, I'm like, yeah, there's a humming sound. And he said, "It's right nearby. I'm just waking up. I'm a little groggy, but I definitely notice that there is a weird sound. He grabs his binoculars and we go outside and we're trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. It's somewhere nearby. It's not exactly right over the top of us, but it's close enough that it's in the vicinity. We walk around the cabin a little bit and find it is maybe 50 to 100 feet behind the cabin. It's kind of a little bit more in the woods near a path that goes into the lake. We walked out there and he gave me his binoculars and it wasn't shaped like a booger. I don't know what he had in his mind, but it was this thing kind of sitting, I don't know exactly how high, but fairly high that with the binoculars, it made it easier to see, but it wasn't crystal clear. It was shaped sort of like an oval bowl that was turned upside down and had the back cut off of it slightly. So it wasn't like a perfect saucer shape. It was sort of a almost saucer shape. It was illuminated and there was sort of a green tint off of it. I remember that. So I guess that's where he got his booger theory. We were taking turns looking at it through the binoculars. It was moving slowly. It was sort of humming and hovering. The best way I could describe the sound, it was sort of like a... If this makes sense, you could feel it more than you could hear it. Like if you're standing on an overpass and a truck goes by, I remember feeling it in my chest. So we stood out there and we were watching this thing. We were trading the binoculars back and forth, and it was cold. It was very cold. But I didn't bring my jacket, and the longer we stayed out there, the more I realized that it was cold. Initially, I think the shock and surprise of the whole thing was just, oh my God, what's going on? And we walked a little ways, so you kind of warmed yourself up a little bit just walking out there. But standing out there watching this thing for half hour or so, it got cold. I was like, look, I want to keep looking at this thing, but we should go back to the cabin and get jackets or whatnot so that we don't get sick. We start walking back to the cabin, and as I'm walking, I'm still feeling that pulsating in my chest. And I, of course, look over my shoulder to see if this thing's following us or not, and thankfully it wasn't. So we get back to the cabin, and I get my jacket, and he gets his jacket. We go back out and start walking towards where it was, but we notice that the noise is further away. And as we start to get closer to where we were, the more distant it sounds. And then finally, it just stops altogether. We stayed out there for a little while longer, just kind of looking around, seeing if we could see anything. We stayed out there maybe an hour waiting for something, and nothing ever happened. Nothing else ever came. So we went back to the cabin and went to sleep. The next morning was rough because being in the Boy Scouts, they got everybody up early. I think they got us up right at dawn, and after standing out in the cold in the middle of the night, I wasn't really in the mood to get up and do much of anything. But it was the last day, so there really wasn't a whole lot to do. We got up, had breakfast, had a little Boy Scout hurrah, whatever. Everyone went back to the cabins, gathered all their belongings, and went home. That year, after we got back, I was talking to Gil about it, and he drew a picture that was pretty much the way I remembered it. And the only thing that was different, he drew like little windows on the side that had like little aliens looking out of it. And I think that was just part of his overactive imagination, because I don't remember that shit at all. I think he was trumping it up to make it more exciting than it was. The next fall, we came back to the campground, but nothing like that happened again. And that was the last year I did the Boy Scouts. I think after that, I just lost interest. Wasn't as cool as I thought it was when I was younger. So, that's the UFO story. I have no idea what it was. I'm not saying it was an alien spacecraft, because that's one of the things people often misinterpret UFO. UFO is unidentified flying object. And that's what I saw, an unidentified flying object. Now, have I ever seen anything like it ever again? No. Was it part of an overactive imagination of somebody who maybe watched Close Encounters a few too many times? Possibly, but I doubt it. I remember this thing fairly vividly. It was unusual, and I get a little creeped out thinking about it because it was just unexplained. So thankfully I wasn't abducted or anything, as far as I know. I've since seen things in the sky that I wasn't sure what they were, but I think that's pretty much everybody. I used to work near a private airport and would see oddball things in the sky all the time, but usually it was just some plane that was hanging in the sky in just the right way that you couldn't tell what the hell it was. I never saw another quote-unquote UFO in that capacity again. I saw other unidentified flying objects that were just shooting stars or what have you, but nothing that was that unexplained where I actually got a good look at it and was able to make out some sort of craft. So I'm sitting here telling the story about the UFO, and suddenly it pops in my head. I remember something else weird that happened to me. When I was about 16 or 17 years old, I had an encounter with the Red Church. And if you don't know what the Red Church is, I'll tell you all about it the next time I do another one of these. That's all I got for now. I'll see you next time.